So before we start, I should give you a quick spoiler alert. Every institution in Canada is run by woke lunatics. Here's the headline. Jordan Peterson forced to undergo re-education from Ontario College of Psychologists to retain his license. So here you have the most famous psychologist in the world being reprimanded by a little group of tin pot dictators in the Ontario College of Psychologists. And I'm sure it makes them feel extremely proud of themselves in their tiny authoritarian hearts. And of course it goes without saying that, of course this is political. Of course it is. Because you could be just a full-on communist revolutionary with Stalin tattooed on your forehead and a t-shirt that says, "I hate kulaks," talking about exterminating the bourgeoisie. You could go on the CBC and say it, and nothing is going to happen to you because it's Canada. But one step out of line of the woke orthodoxy? Well, guess what? One step is too far. So what's the background here? So psychologist and former University of Toronto professor Dr. Jordan Peterson was ordered by the Ontario College of Psychologists to undergo a re-education training program over his social media posts. And Jordan Peterson took them to court to prevent this re-education. And disturbingly, Jordan Peterson has lost his legal challenge to the Ontario College of Psychologists because apparently the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms means nothing. And judges are not bound by law. They are completely free to just make whatever arbitrary judgment they would like. And let's go to the court documents themselves to view a list of Jordan Peterson's various crimes against humanity. A tweet on January 2nd, 2022, in which Dr. Peterson responded to an individual who expressed concern about overpopulation by stating, "You're free to leave at any point." So pointing out the obvious hypocrisy. Let's see, on Joe Rogan, he spoke about a vindictive client whose complaint about him was a pack of lies. Speaking about air pollution and child deaths, Dr. Peterson said, "It's just poor children and the world has too many people on it anyways." That's obviously sarcasm and pointing out hypocrisy. It's probably not useful to show it out of context. He said that an Ottawa city councillor who uses they, them pronouns was a, quote, appalling, self-righteous, moralizing thing. He said that Ellen Page had her breasts removed by a criminal physician. He commented on a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition cover with a plus-size model tweeting, quote, "Sorry, not beautiful. And no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that." Yeah, but they're sure going to try, aren't they? Now, here's the first paragraph in the overview. It says, when individuals join a regulated profession, they do not lose their charter right to freedom of expression. Okay, great. So they don't lose their charter rights. Excellent. Well, what's this all about then? Well, let's continue. At the same time, however, they take on obligations and must abide by the rules of their regulatory body that may limit their freedom of expression. So it seems to me you can either have your charter right to freedom of expression, or a regulatory body may limit your freedom of expression. Doesn't seem like you can really have both, does it? Because one is freedom of expression and one isn't. And if that sounds like Orwellian doublethink to you, well, welcome to Canada. So let's just get to the heart of the reasoning behind the court denying Jordan Peterson's case. It says the ICRC, which is the Inquiries, Complaints, and Reports Committee, ICRC, of the College of Psychologists of Ontario, it says that they identified language used by Dr. Peterson which it was concerned was degrading or demeaning or otherwise unprofessional. This concern is entitled to deference. It was not necessary to engage in whether Dr. Peterson's comments were supported by facts or were his honest opinion, as the concern arises from the nature of the language used, not the validity of his opinions. Let me repeat that. Not the validity of his opinions. Again, Dr. Peterson is speaking as a regulated professional psychologist. What might be protected by the laws of defamation, such as the defense of fair comment, is not the point. No, I guess the point is finding a way to punish somebody even if what they're saying is true. So in short, what this says is they're not ruling against him because of what he said. It's because of how he said it. So here's another spoiler alert. In Canada, you don't have free speech. So let's just get to the last point here in the court document. The panel concluded reasonably that Dr. Peterson's behavior raised a moderate risk of harm to the public, which the panel had articulated in its decision, and concluded that it was very concerned that the recurrence risk was high in this case. It therefore concluded its chain of analysis by deciding that, quote, it would be appropriate and in the public interest to require Dr. Peterson to complete a SCRP to address his professionalism in public statements. So what is a SCRP? It's a specified continuing education or remedial program. So that is an outcome available to the ICRC after considering a complaint or report. It is an education or remedial program the ICRC orders the members to complete to address conduct or practice concerns. Now, I was watching a video from the Canadian Constitution Foundation, and they were explaining that that process is actually open-ended. You have to complete it to the satisfaction of that body. It can go on forever. It can go on for the rest of your life, according to what I heard. And you also have to pay for it yourself. This is extremely onerous. This seems like just the sort of punishment that could be used to silence people. But let's see what the Canadian Constitution Foundation has to say. The Canadian Constitution Foundation is disappointed in the result of the judicial review of a case between public intellectual Dr. Jordan Peterson and the College of Psychologists of Ontario. The dispute is over professional penalties in the form of mandatory training imposed on Dr. Peterson by the college. This order for training was a result of public statements Dr. Peterson made on social media. The comments did not relate to the practice of psychology. The complaints were made by members of the public, not by any individuals who Dr. Peterson ever treated as a patient. So just random people. So what did Peterson himself have to say about this? This is from January 3rd, 2023. About a dozen people from all over the world submitted complaints about my public statements on Twitter and Rogan over a 4-year period. Out of the 15 million who follow me on social media, claiming that I had harmed people, not them, with my views. So about a dozen people from all over the world who have nothing to do with Jordan Peterson or any of his clients complained that his views were harming other, not even themselves, other people somehow. That's enough to get you into re-education training, because somebody somewhere thought that something you said might harm somebody somewhere for some reason. So you can see how if you're not super famous like Jordan Peterson and you rely on that psychologist's license to house and feed yourself and your family, this could certainly have a chilling effect. And a chilling effect on what? On your ability to express yourself publicly. And as we're learning from this judgment from this court in Canada, it doesn't even matter what you say. It's just whether or not they decide that they don't like how you said it. Let me repeat, it was not necessary to engage in whether Dr. Peterson's comments were supported by facts or were his honest opinion, as the concern arises from the nature of the language used, not the validity of his opinions. And in case you had any questions about the ideological capture of the College of Psychologists of Ontario, well, let's take a look at their equity, diversity, and inclusion page. Of course they've got one of those. Here it says, the College of Psychologists of Ontario is committed to continuing its work on issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion as they relate to our organizational practices and processes. This webpage is intended to be a dynamic resource which will change as the environment evolves and the college addresses matters meaningfully and proactively. So it's going to be a dynamic resource which will change as the environment evolves. What does that mean? That means they have no principles. That means that whatever the next woke fad is, they're going to jump on it immediately. I mean, they wouldn't want random people from around the world who have nothing to do with them complaining that they're causing harm. They might have to go in for retraining. Anyway, let's get back to this article. Quote, we hope that Dr. Peterson will appeal this result, which will have long-lasting impacts beyond his case. The right to freedom of expression must be given more weight than the court gives it here, and the mere assertion of risk of harm is not enough. While controversial and inflammatory, there is no suggestion that any of the people Dr. Peterson made comments about were harmed in any way, and indeed, they were not the source of the complaints. Complaints were made by members of the public who simply did not like what Dr. Peterson said, or worse, how he said it. This is not a sufficient basis for action by the regulator when weighed against Dr. Peterson's constitutional right for freedom of expression. And that quote was from CCF Litigation Director Christine Van Gyn. And Peterson himself said this: so the Ontario Court of Appeal ruled that CP Ontario can pursue their prosecution. If you think you have a right to free speech in Canada, you're delusional. I will make every aspect of this public, and we will see what happens when utter transparency is the rule. Bring it on. So I guess we'll have to watch and see what happens from here, but one thing I can say pretty confidently is that I don't think Jordan B. Peterson is going to bend the knee anytime soon, nor should he. And you should absolutely support him in this if you have the slightest concern about ever being able to speak your mind freely in Canada. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.